It's okay. We haven't done anything major yet. We're good. So you can download if you want to. You would just click on any chapter if you want. So you could click on chapter 5 and it will download a zip file of the images he uses in chapter 5, but go ahead and use them for this. And it will put them in your downloads folder eventually. And I really wish the downloads folder was here by default. There we go. So it will give you, and I have too many things in my download folder. Let's sort by date created, date modified. Let's do this. There we go. Kelby. So you can, if you want to use these photos, the zip file is just compressed folder. So you would just double click that zip file. It will automatically unzip it. It will give you a chapter 5 folder and then all the images in here so that you have something to work with. So if needed, click the book files, download a chapter, anyone at this point. And then you are golden. Okay. Now last week we talked a little bit about the process of how, yeah, Christy.
You know what I do? I cannot submit anything to Blackboard. Like,
are you in Chrome?
No, I'm in Safari.
Okay. Use Firefox.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I've been trying.
Another instructor told me about that today. I just had, actually Michaela just did it and submitted through Chrome just fine. But Chrome and Safari are having issues with trying to submit files, so use Firefox.
Okay.
If you're having trouble submitting, we're not exactly sure what that issue is, but that has been the only one that works. So open all 3 browsers and guess.
To, like, my other teacher, because the other day it just kept, I'm like, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Yeah, I told Chris I'd ask anyone to see if that was happening, and there it is. So it is. So let's see here. So we talked a little bit about how we're going to organize some stuff in Lightroom. Lightroom creates a catalog. Lightroom is, when we work within Lightroom, the biggest thing you need to understand is, unlike some applications you may have used in the past, what Lightroom does not do is store your photos. You cannot store, you won't import photos into Lightroom and that's where they live. Lightroom is a software that references images. So it's basically pointing, it's saying you are working on an image, but it lives here. So it looks for that image. It's like linking stuff on a website, basically. If those links don't work, they become broken and you can't click and get to where you need to go. It's the same thing in Lightroom. I can't necessarily edit an image if Lightroom can't find it. So it doesn't exist at that point. So we have ways of working around that. I did mention last week that if you go back and forth between PC and Mac, you may find it disconnects your images, but I will show you what happens. So we'll kind of walk through that scenario. We'll move a file after we import it so you can see what it does in Lightroom. But first, we need to create that catalog. So we just need that holder for all the data of everything that we do in Lightroom. The images are separate. Lightroom is a non-destructive editing software, so it always just looks to the image for the data. It will never write over the top of it. So I can edit away, edit to my heart's content, and no matter what I do, it will never ruin the original file because it's creating a preview that it uses and stores data in. And then only when I take it out of Lightroom and export it, will it actually bake that information into a file. But we'll still have to save a second file, so it's still not ruining our originals. Our originals will always be untouched. That's the beautiful thing about Lightroom, especially if you shoot JPEGs. RAW is always a non-destructive edit, but JPEGs is more of a destructive edit because you can just hit File Save and it writes over the top of it. But in Lightroom, regardless of what you do, it will always keep that data separate until you export and it creates a whole different file. So that's how that will work. Now, we have to create that catalog, and I mentioned last week that you'll want to store that catalog on an external hard drive because you could put it on the desktop, but then you're going to have to copy it at the end of class and then put it back on the desktop next week, copy it back at the end of class next week. So there's a lot of back and forth copying that if your hard drive is fast enough, let's just work off of that, and it's way easier to open. So what I would do to start off, just want to get rid of this Band-Aid. Ouch. So what I would do, yeah, go ahead.
There's a way to restart.
Oh, is it frozen?
No, I can like drag and it highlights things that I can click, but I can't actually click them.
Oh, damn.
I don't know how to look at
Let's try, will that do it? Let's try. Which one did you go to? Okay, if you hold the power button on the left side behind the computer, hold it down
Is there a SD
until the
button?
computer shuts down.
If you're looking for the photos.
There we go. And then give it a
Will
second before you turn it
like
back
now
on.
if it says,
It's in that.
like now that it's been like went on Firefox, it says a template.
Oh, no,
Okay.
yeah, I know you're having issues, so we're good. Okay, so what I would do is if you have your hard drive, plug it in. If it's not, step number 1, let's plug it in. And then, especially if it's a new hard drive, we will quickly find out if we have to format any of your hard drives. But what we want to do, yeah, you'll be good. Then we'll just copy it over to your hard drive next week and you'll be fine. Yeah, it should work just fine, especially for the amount of stuff we're putting in it today. You should be good. So I have my little blue external hard drive that I have plugged into the computer, and it's hanging out right here.
Yeah, mine's not here yet.
Okay, so just create what the files that we need on the desktop. We'll copy them off to a server. You just won't be able to work from the server. You'll have to copy them back in order to edit. So all I want you to do is once you stick your hard drive in, we're just going to create a folder on that hard drive. This one will tell us if we need to format anyone's stuff because it won't let you create a folder if it's not formatted correctly.
Or do I just use my SD?
I wouldn't run it off your SD.
Alright.
I would run it off the desktop. You'll have better luck.
Send you folder. Alright.
So once it's plugged in, it should show up on your desktop, hopefully. Did it show up? Oh, there it is. Okay, yours is that left side. Okay. Yep, so that's yours. So inside there, what I would do is I would just create a folder for workflow class. So you can create a new folder by either going under the little sprocket at the top and do new folder. You can right click somewhere in that window, do new folder, or Command Shift N to create a new folder. Yeah. So I would just create a folder for workflow, and then we'll create a folder for the catalog in there. Yes. So double click the no name. And then just right click in a blank space. And then create folder. And then just whatever you want to call it. Something for workflow class so you can keep it all together.
Okay.
Did you say we can't create folder yet or format?
Is it not letting you?
It let me drag this on the desktop.
It's probably a read only, but try get info once.
Workflow, I think you got it.
Share any permissions. Read only. Okay. So,
Yeah,
yep.
just a folder.
So if you can't create a new folder on your drive and it's new, you need to format your hard drive. Does anyone else have that issue right now?
No, so it doesn't let me open it up.
If we format it, yeah, typically if we format it for the Mac, you shouldn't have a problem going back and forth. It doesn't always work in reverse. If you start on a PC, it typically doesn't, you can you can see your files that you put on it, but you can't put anything new to it because it's a read-only. So So if you have, because when we format it erases everything, so if you want, you got it there, okay, perfect. So no one else is having that issue? Otherwise I'll demonstrate it up there. Okay, so if you go under, you have to go under that little search icon on the top right, the magnifying glass. Way up on the top there. And then type disk, D-I-S-K. And then there we go, utility, so hit return or double click it. Okay, so now we gotta click my passport. And then we're going to erase. And then this format drop down. Let's click on that. Let's see if, how big is it? Is it a?
I think you're fine right now.
Let's see if that will work. Let's try that first and then hit erase. It did work. Okay, good. There we go. So it should be.
I haven't had a look, but
Now you should be able to create a new folder on it. And there you go. Then you can put your other folder back on too. So if you do have a problem with exFAT on the PC, let me know because we can format it to something else, but you should be okay.
Can I just put my pictures in the workflow folder then?
So what we're going to do is we're going to create our catalog in there. Now your images can live wherever you want them to. If you have a structure to your files right now, you can continue using it on your hard drive if that's where you're storing them. The big thing is we just need a spot for the catalog and the files that go with it so that it's easy to locate and get to. So like on my hard drive, I have a ton of stuff on here. So I have a folder for my photography stuff, and then I have a folder called image referenced because Lightroom references, and then all my images are inside there. So I just point Lightroom to that folder, and that's fine. So your images won't have to go into your workflow folder, but I would like for your catalog to go into that folder that you're creating, whatever you call it. And just for ease of finding that catalog, because like my catalog is in the photography folder, but then I have a Lightroom folder, and then my Lightroom catalog resides in there, even though my images are somewhere else. Just makes it easier to find it. So you can create a folder for your catalog inside this workflow folder if you want to, if you plan on putting other things in there. Otherwise, you can just create your catalog right inside at this level. It's completely up to you. But what we're going to do then is we're going to open up Lightroom so that we can create a new catalog in that exact location. Now the first time you open Lightroom, now mine already is going to point to my hard drive because I had it open already. The first time you open Lightroom, it will probably be blank unless you've done something in there already. But Lightroom creates, by default, if it can't find or hasn't been opened before, it creates a catalog on the hard drive of the computer you are sitting at. So it's living in your pictures folder under your user account right now. But we want it to go somewhere else, is what we want it to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new catalog. So File and New Catalog. And it's basically like saving an image. Where do you want it to go? And what do you want it to be called? So you can then navigate to your hard drive. It should show up somewhere under Devices on the left-hand side. And then you can click on that workflow folder you created. And then all you got to do is give your catalog a title. So you can call it workflow if you really want to. It doesn't really matter. But it's going to give it, whatever you call it, .lrcat, Lightroom cat, catalog, is the file extension that it's going to create. So you just give it a name.
Yeah, just give it like a random name that
All you got to do is give it a name. And if you see something that looks like this, you probably can't get to where you want, and that's frustrating. So you just need to click this down arrow next to Save As to expand it so that you can get to what you need.
over here. Left side. Oh, go to left side.
Then you can locate your drive, and it'll be easier.
And then I created it.
Yeah. Yep, so are you at the new catalog? Yep, click that down arrow. There you your, I think that's just the one. Try that one. Nope, try the other one. There we go. And it should be there somewhere. You have the, is it just scroll down? Did you create the folder? Yeah.
Well, no, it's just whatever name they want, really.
There it is. I don't know why it's been doing that. There we go. Okay. It's like the,
So do I
yep,
select
like
it?
that. There we go. And then title this whatever you want.
Okay.
Yep. And you can, yeah, you can click on Lightroom Catalog too
Okay.
then to get into that menu. Once you get it where you want it to go and you give it a name, just hit create. Now what Lightroom's gonna do, and it might freak you out, it's gonna shut down and restart itself because it has to switch catalogs. Every time you have to switch a catalog, it has to basically restart itself to bring up the one you want to use. It'll probably still look the same. It'll be blank if it was blank before. So it won't look any different. However, it should say whatever you called it .lrcat at the top so that you know which one it's in.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
So if I did flowers catalog, then how do you, and Alexa's in here, how do you get to see it?
So, okay, so click on the workflow folder. And then, oh, your window. See if you can drag that window out. There
There
it
it
is.
is.
See, I don't know why. There's weird little things
Like,
going
where
on.
is that
Where's the
create
button? Yeah, there's weird little things. Like hers didn't show the
Create
scroll.
button on mine.
Yours
Oh,
too?
that's
Yeah.
good.
Drag it
Oh,
off.
that's good,
Make
'cause
your
I
try to
didn't
make
get
your
that
window a
window
little
yet.
bit bigger, like
I didn't get that
off the
window.
side here. You get that. There you go. Those arrows. Yeah, just drag it. See, there it is. I don't know why
There it
it's
is.
doing that.
I don't know.
Now hit create. That's so weird that that's happening.
After you hit create, do you hit put then when the Lightroom thing comes up?
Close import. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, yours automatically did the import, so that's probably why it needed to get out of it. And then it should restart itself. So now we have this lovely blank catalog. Now, if you're ever questioning what catalog you're working in, like if I were to unplug my drive, shut down Lightroom, unplug my drive, come back in with it unplugged and open Lightroom, I might think I'm going to open up what I was using. It always opens the last catalog you had open. However, if your drive isn't plugged in, it's going to default back to the picture folder. So to know what catalog you're working in, it'll tell you the title at the top, but if you leave it as the generic Lightroom catalog name, you'll be guessing for days which one it is. So the way to find that is if you go under the Lightroom menu, so every software you use has different preferences, and up, so it'll have a menu item titled with the software you're in, like Photoshop, Lightroom. If you go in there, there's a separate preference, but in Lightroom there's two different preference boxes to bring up. One is general preferences, this one is catalog settings. So if you go and click on that catalog settings, it's going to tell you under this general tab exactly where your catalog is. It'll show you the hierarchy. So it's on my 4 terabyte drive in my workflow folder, and it's called workflow. So if you're ever questioning what catalog you're in, go Lightroom, catalog settings, and look at the location. And if it's wrong, you can switch it. And I'll show you how to do that. But that is where you would look to find that. We'll spend some more time in the preferences later. So if at any point you need to switch, maybe you didn't plug your hard drive in right away, it opened up the one in the picture folder, you need to get to yours. Honestly, the easiest way to get to it is from the Finder. So you can, here let me quit Lightroom momentarily to show you because it'll get rid of my extra files here. So if I go to the Finder, if I just logged in, I go to my hard drive, my workflow folder, you'll see it creates a folder inside there because Lightroom has several, and I only have 2 right now, but as I add images and do things, more files will be added. It creates, all the data lives in these extra files. So while the Lightroom catalog is the file we typically open and use, it doesn't have all the data in it. All these extra little files, LR data, I can't remember the other file names. I'd have to go into my other catalog here to know which one, what it calls them all. LR data. There's a temporary data that it saves. It's going to create backups at some point. So you want all these files to stay together, which is why it creates this folder and puts them all in that folder. If you ever have to move your catalog, like if your hard drive is coming in and then you move it from what you're working on now to your new hard drive, you need to copy this entire folder or you're going to be missing some data and your catalog won't work properly. So all the files it creates within this folder have to stay together. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. If you just simply turn in this LRCat file, I'm not going to be able to open it to grade anything. You're not going to be able to open it if you don't have the rest of it on a different day. So you'll be stuck. So the whole folder has to travel together. So just know that. That's the biggest thing. Now, like I said, if you just want to open a certain catalog, all you have to do is, the easiest way to do it, go to where you have it in your Finder, so my hard drive, my folders, and just double click the workflow LRCat file, and then it will open straight to that file. So there's no guessing at that point. It's like opening an image in Photoshop. Double click and it opens. Now I know I'm working in the right catalog. I can go catalog settings if I'm paranoid, and there it is. If you have Lightroom open already, you can go File, Open Catalog, and then you can navigate just like you would open any image or any other piece like a Word document or whatever. Then I can go find it, and I can select the Lightroom catalog, and then what it will do is relaunch Lightroom and open that catalog. So you have a couple different ways of getting there. If Lightroom's open, File, Open Catalog. If it's not, just double click the file, and then you're good. Now, he starts out chapter 1, I find this weird. He starts out chapter 1 with, what do you do if your pictures are missing? We haven't put any flippin' pictures in there yet. How can anything be missing? So let's come back to that. We're gonna table that one momentarily. He also does walk through creating second backups and stuff like that, and getting organized and some thought processes to how to organize your photos. So that's something you can certainly read on your own if you need some tips and tricks and stuff like that. If you have a structure already, just continue using that if that's what's working. But things to consider, like we talked about last week, dates, creating a folder with the date that you created the images, maybe a client name if you're working with people, maybe date and client name, things like that as you're creating your file structure. Mine looks like a mess right now, but when I put it on my second backup drive, if I can get to it, mine simply is last name, first letter of their first name. And if there's multiple folders by the same people, I put a little description after it. But for this, on my portable drive, I just keep it all in one folder. When I back it up by year, and then client name and that. Since I do everything in Lightroom, I can search by date, so I don't have to necessarily put the date on it. So it works just fine. But otherwise, doing the date and then the name, some type of description type of a deal works really well. So there's another level of organization once it gets to my backup drives. For portability, I just keep it simple. Okay. So let's do a little bit with importing. That's half the battle. We got to get images before we can do anything in here. Now, there are two different ways to import. You can import straight from a camera card. You can import from things you've dumped onto a computer or hard drive. Because Lightroom is simply pointing and saying, hey, that's where the image is, you just have to tell it, where to go. You just have to tell Lightroom to either take it off my camera card and put it here, or here's where it is, leave it there, but bring it in Lightroom so I can do stuff, if that makes sense. So, as is true to any Adobe software, there are 3 ways to do everything. At least 3 ways to do everything. I will print this off for you guys because I think you will find benefit in it. But I created, I didn't link it in here. Am I logged into this? I should send this to the printer as I'm talking about it, or I will forget to go back to it later. Come on, scroll. Workflow. I created a little quickie chart. I'm just going to print off a sheet of paper for you guys so that quickies are super, super important. Anything you can push on your keyboard to get to a certain point rather than try and find it in a menu, your production will go through the roof. You'll get stuff done a heck of a lot faster if you can click and touch things on the keyboard without going to a menu. I think it was in this class I told you I don't remember where half the things are in the menus because I just push the buttons. So it takes me a second to remember where it is when I'm showing you. So the more quick keys you can learn, the better off you're going to be. So to help you remember, I created a little chart. I stuck a few in there right off the bat that we'll talk about today. But I'll print this off, give it to you so that you can write it down. When it comes to testing on things, you can use this document. So if that's an incentive to write it down, use it. Let me print this though. And when we take a brief break, I'll make sure 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, we'll just do 20 for safekeeping. I'll send that to the printer and then I'll run it off when we have a second so that I can give that to you guys today. Sure. Okay, but importing can be done 3 different ways. There is, when you plug in a card, a lot of times it just opens up the import menu and you're good to go. But in the actual screen, on the left-hand side, there is a import button that you can click. It'll bring up the menu. You can also get there by doing File, Import Photos and Video, or Command-Shift-I. I for import. That's an easy one. There are some quick keys that really stink to remember. But Command-Shift-I will bring up the import menu. All will get you to the same spot. The import menu, once you get there, the import menu will have on the left-hand side basically your navigation of where to find the images. So it's called source. So where are your images? If you have a camera card plugged in, you'll see devices, and it will probably bring that up automatically. If you have it somewhere on a hard drive, or maybe you're using the book files, we're going to have to find them wherever you downloaded them to. We need to find them so we can import. The middle is your thumbnail area where you can check and select which photos to import. And the right-hand side is basically all the options we have for importing. Now, if you're importing from a camera card, you are going to have more options on the right-hand side versus if you were just, let me find my desktop really quick. I'll show you how to get there in a second. School. Versus if I were to pull them from somewhere that I've already downloaded them, like a desktop or a hard drive, my options on the right-hand side are a lot less. And the difference is because when I get off of a camera card, what Lightroom does is a camera card, it can't stay there. Lightroom recognizes that as something portable and something that's going to change. So it says you have to copy these somewhere and make them live somewhere else. I can't read a camera card file forever. Then if you are pulling it from a hard drive, it's going to give you an option to add. Basically, these live somewhere. Just put the previews in Lightroom so that I can edit, is basically what it's doing. But leave them where they are. Don't move them because you're going to mess with my head. So that's basically what happens here. And that's also the difference, because when we're copying, we can do more on import than when we're adding. We're going to eventually be able to do all the same stuff, just not through the import menu. So your book will describe both. So if you, let's see, so if you're doing it from a hard drive and you need that reference in the future, that's on page 10. If you are importing from your camera, that starts on page 13. So they're one right after the other, just so you know.
Oh. The from to.
The from to, yeah.
I was wondering if it had the same. Which side do I go?
So a lot of you probably don't have them from a camera card, is my guess. So you're probably finding them from a hard drive, or you have that folder that you downloaded. So we got to find it. So if you downloaded it and it's in the downloads folder, or if you have something on your desktop, you need to go to the Macintosh HD, and we have to drill down a little bit. So you have to open the users folder. You have to find your student ID and open that one. From there, you will have desktop, downloads, pictures folder, all that good stuff. So if it's on your desktop, you can open the desktop folder and then click whatever one it is that you're looking for. If it's in your downloads folder, if I open that up and I find that chapter 5 folder is the one I downloaded, and I click that, it will bring up the images. So you have to drill down a little bit. If it's a hard drive that you have plugged in, it probably shows up. Here, let me collapse this so you can see it. Here's my hard drive, my 4 terabyte. You can open it up from there and drill down till you find the images. So that's where you're going to find those. Let me go back to this folder. School. There we go. But once you get there, your images show up in the middle. Happy day.
This class of it is so helpful before digital and all the other classes are taken.
That's why we moved it to first semester. Quit taking classes out of order. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, that's why we pushed it to the front as one of the first classes we recommend taking.
Where it says source here.
So let's see. So you don't have source at all?
No, it says.
Oh, was I trip up my own? Oh, you're not in the
I
import.
use my SD card, so like from the camera.
There it is. Now you're there. Everyone there?
No.
Okay.
Alright, so it seems to be thinking about something.
Let's see. So that is in. That's in the
This is
downloads
the zip
folder.
file. This is the zip file, but I took the other one out and put it here.
Oh,
Same
okay,
thing.
but it's the same. Okay, try it out. Can you cancel it? Or is that one just too slow? Try going back. Put that X up here. Instead of here. There it goes.
I have like way too many images in here. All
Okay,
of
is
them
it
are raw,
working
so
on
I'm just gonna have to transfer from my
Downloads.
Mac
Okay, where is your catalog living right now?
on the desktop.
That should have been an issue then. Huh. Let's try putting Lightroom. Let's see if something's hanging out. Yep. And then let's open it back
Oh,
up.
Photoshop.
Yeah, try putting that too. It shouldn't be too big of an issue, but okay, let's try it again. Yeah, it shouldn't be hanging like that. Why is it not home? Okay, it was on the workflow, in there, and double click that. I don't know why it's saying it's not found. It's right there.
Is that broken?
Yes. Chances are, did you by any chance move it from where it started? Did you have it in a different spot and move it to the desktop? I wonder if that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, try importing it. Let's see if that happens. Because if it can't find the catalog, it stalls. There it is. Okay, I think it might have moved. That's probably the issue. Yeah. No, that's it. That's the same. Try and, okay, click the X where it says copy and import. Let's cancel this. Yeah, that X right there. Images, okay, so, okay. Okay, and you put your card too. Okay, you might have to put your card back in. So then we'll go through the next few steps here, but it's showing up because we have to tell it where it needs to put it. So we'll go through. No, don't worry about that yet. We're gonna create a spot for it to go if you're doing it from your camera card. So I wonder if it's trying to put it somewhere it couldn't, and that's why it's stalled. So let's start there. Let's see what happens. Yes. Okay, so import.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't hopefully not all images.
Oh, it did import already. Okay, so you clicked
So-
import.
Okay.
Okay, click this X here. Let's cancel this. Don't go too far ahead yet. It's gonna take a second.
This one.
There it goes. Okay, so once it lets you import again. Import and all photographs. I don't know those numbers match.
So these are not all my images. Not that I need all my images, you know, but.
Because this was an empty catalog to start. Yes. Right, oh, it's still going, okay, we just gotta let it catch up. It's still trying to import that last set before we hit cancel.
Okay.
So just let it catch up and then this eventually will come up here.
Okay.
So let's just give it a second.
All right.
But if after a minute or two it doesn't catch up, let me know.
All right.
So if I did my pictures right on here, and then you just have to go into this for the source.
So let's see, yep, so do you know where they are? Are they in the, let's see, did you put them on that drive? Is that where you had it?
My camera card's in there.
Okay, so click,
How do I get there?
click no name. That's the name of your camera card.
Oh,
There they are.
Okay.
Yep, so the devices is where your camera cards will show up. Everything else will be in that second file section. Oh, that one we're doing on the server next week. So as long as you have it done, we'll do it on the server next week. So I'll show everyone how to submit it that way. So do you have the digital file of it? Okay, then just keep that and next week I'll show you where to do that. Yep, because we're not doing that right now. Then you should be good. Yep. Okay, so now that we're in there, now there's a couple of things here too. So let me start first. If you are importing from a hard drive or something other than a card, a camera card, because I think a lot of you are doing it that way. If you're on a camera card, hold tight because I want to show you a couple of things too. Don't be too quick to click import. Okay, so once we've located the file, we're done with everything on this left-hand side, unless you're importing from a camera card. If you're importing from a camera card, one thing I recommend is this eject after import button. Uncheck that. Because sometimes you have multiple things on a card and you want to do two separate imports, or you import and something's not right and you want to re-import something. If you leave that checked, it will eject your card and then you have to pull it out and then you got to push it back in and you have to start all over again. So just uncheck that. It's easier for you to control when that ejects and not let Lightroom do that for you. But on a hard drive, you don't have to worry about that. So on a hard drive, here we go.
Would you prefer like if the raw picture or like anything? Right?
It's gonna, either one. Either way, it's non-destructive, so it doesn't matter what you choose. Yeah, it's gonna edit everything as if it were a raw file. You just have more data on one versus the other. So things to think about. Now we move over to this middle section. You can choose which images you want to select, or you can choose all of them. In the lower right-hand corner is a tiny little number showing you how many images it's going to import. So if you've checked and unchecked all over the place, this will tell you how many images out of everything it's going to import. So you can uncheck all if you want to, and then just select the couple that you want. One thing you can do is, maybe I just don't want these three. I could have just check, and uncheck those and left everything else. I could have done it that way. But if I had more photos, I would uncheck all and just select the ones I want. So let's say it's this grouping of photos that I want to do. I can click on the thumbnail of one, shift click on the last one if they're all in order, and then just check the box of one of those selected images and it will check all of them. It's a very quick way to select a handful of images. Otherwise, I'd be doing it one by one, and that's just a waste of time. So that's a quick way of doing it. But regardless, when you get to the point where these are the images I want to import, I need to look at the information on the right-hand side. This is probably the most important part of the entire import menu, is whatever's hanging out over here. So what's hanging out over here if I'm importing from a hard drive are only these two things. If you are importing from a camera card, you do have these things, but you will have more in addition to it. Because Lightroom is only adding, and it says add photos to catalog without moving them, it tells you what it's doing. These are the options I have. File handling. Okay, under here we have several different options. I'm not going to bother explaining them because it's a headache. Just leave it at minimal. Because we're just building a preview of what we're going to use to view and edit and do some stuff. You don't need to do anything but minimum, or the minimal. There are other settings we can change. It's the fastest method too, especially if you're importing a lot. So that's what I would choose. If you need larger previews for any reason, or if you're familiar with what an XMP file does with a RAW file, you can choose embedded in Sidecar. If you need larger previews, you can do the 1-to-1 because it will create a full-size preview at 100% of what that original file is. I would say 90% of the time, if not more.
If we plan to do a big editing, we just got minimal too?
Minimal's fine. Yep, because it's when you export, what you export is that the file at is what's important.
Okay.
But when you're just editing and because you're just previewing the image to do your edits and stuff, you really don't need anything besides that. There's very, very few times where a 1-to-1 would be necessary. So I would say well over 90% of the time, you're going to leave it at minimal. So you're fine there. Now, smart previews is something to think about. It will be unchecked right now. However, if you work off of a laptop, or if your images are stored on an external hard drive, and there are times where you want to edit and you don't have your hard drive on you, you can't edit unless that hard drive is connected. Unless you check this button right here. Smart previews basically embed a small preview of all the data. It's almost like it's saving the image inside the catalog. It's still not, but it's giving you a smarter version of your preview to work with so that you can actually edit when your hard drive is not plugged into your computer.
But if we want to export, we need it to connect.
But if you want to export, it has to be connected. Exactly. Yep. So that's the thing. When you do exporting and you need to get it out of Lightroom, you have to have the hard drive connected because it has to be able to read the full file to bake the information to it. But other than that, if it's just editing, cropping, that kind of stuff, smart previews will allow you to do that. One downfall is that it increases the file size of your catalog very quickly because it's giving you more data for every file that you import. So I would be selective with when you use that. You do have the option that once you're done with something, you can delete the smart previews. It'll still stay in your catalog, all your stuff will be there, but that extra information that's not necessary anymore because you're pretty much done with it. You can delete smart previews while keeping the regular previews in your catalog.
So if you're importing a lot of images and you don't select it when you first import it, but say you narrow them down to your top like 10, 15, can you add the smart previews to just those ones?
Yes, you can actually build the smart previews after the fact. Yep, absolutely. That is entirely possible. Some people, if you do a lot of traveling, it's better to build the smart previews when you import, just because you probably don't have all that stuff connected all the time. So in that case, then you know it's there. So yes, you can.
I don't know if we're gonna cover it, but is there a way to, because I know this is the classic, and then the new CC one they got also links to your phone, so all of your pictures you can do on any device. Can you link this to all of that?
I will have to check. I believe so. You still have limited editing from the phone side, even if you link it, but you should still be able to do everything. Yes, I will check into that though, because I don't do that as often. Yeah.
It's still
Oh my gosh, seriously. Let's quit Lightroom and reopen it and see if that. It is stalling. It's still importing those few. Wow. I wonder if it's just super slow on that flash drive. Maybe what we'll do is we'll copy it to the desktop, work off of there, and then when we're done, we'll copy it to your drive so that you have the files.
okay.
I think maybe the flash drive's just a little slow.
Okay.
It's, wow, let's force quit it. Let's just do it that way. Okay, close that.
Like just
Nope, just close the red circle in the corner. Okay, go to your no name drive, yep, that one, and then drag that folder to the desktop. And then, once that's done, yeah, I think it's just the right speed slow, that's what it's doing. So then from there, once that's done copying, you'll open that folder, and then we'll double click the Lightroom catalog from there. Okay, now open that, go inside there, and double click the color kappa. There you go. It'll take a second. Oh, there. Now when you go to import, you should be better off. Try
Okay.
that now.
Alright.
Yeah.
So it's that, when do you select just the workflow folder where you import? Or
So
is that
you
like-
gotta decide where it's gonna go. That's what we're gonna get to.
Alright.
So we'll get there in a second. So Build Smart Previews is going to allow you to do your editing without having that image actually connected. So that's a bonus. The checkbox don't import suspected duplicates is gonna save you a lot of time. So what it will do is it will gray out what you have already imported, only showing you or allowing you to check the ones that have not been imported. So if you have multiple things that you shot on one card, this will just make importing a lot faster. So I would leave that checked. You do have an option to make a second copy so that if you use mine won't let me do that right now. If you use a backup hard drive, you can automatically on import, more so from a camera card is probably why mine's grayed out. If you're doing it from a camera card, you should be able to check that so that you can put it in one spot and your backup location at the same time. So all it's doing is it's saving you time from having to then back it up later on. So it's doing it for you. And then there's an add to collection button. Now we'll talk about collections in a moment, but basically what it is it's a way to organize your files in Lightroom because you have a whole big catalog of stuff and all your images just reside in one spot. This is a way to basically create your organization structure within Lightroom, not where it's going to save your image to, but an organization structure within Lightroom. So like on mine, I use the same file structure of where I save it. So in my image reference folder, where I have all the names of the clients, I create a collection in Lightroom with that same naming in it, and then I organize it based on the type of photography. So I'll show you that in a second, but it is a good idea that as you start using collections that you just do it on import because you will save yourself a step. So if you want to just call this a test one to see what it does, you can click add to collection. You click the plus button to create one, and we can just call this test import if you want to. And I'll go through what these mean later on. So for now, we'll just create kind of a dummy one so you can see what it does. So it will create one, it will put the images in there, and once it's imported, you'll see the difference. Now, apply during import, this second section right here. We probably don't have anything we can do right now because we haven't created presets. We're not quite there. We're going to do more of that next week rather than this week. Let's worry about importing and functioning at the moment. So as we create presets, maybe we know our camera is low on contrast, low on saturation, that kind of stuff. And every single image, I have to do the same stinking adjustment to every single image I take on my camera. When we get to creating presets, we can create a preset with that when it imports, it will apply that to it. So I don't have to do it. So I know my camera needs a certain level of contrast and a certain level of saturation or vibrance. I'm going to create a preset later on. And then from here on out, all I have to do is select my preset, let's say it's clarity 1, that every image, when it imports, it automatically applies that, so I don't have to do it later on. It's saving you a step and saving you some time because we're doing it when we import. It's awesome. Same thing with metadata. So if I have, maybe I like to apply my copyright, my information, my website information, my contact information, maybe something specific to where I shot the image, that kind of stuff. I can apply that metadata when I import it so that I don't have to do it one by one after the fact. So that will save a lot of time. So I have already created a preset for mine that will apply a copyright symbol with my name and then my contact information and copyright restrictions and stuff like that. But we'll get there. That's a next week deal, so don't worry right now. Just know that that's what that is. And then keywords is the last thing. So keywords would be anything that makes your image searchable. We can't really search the image itself. I mean, to an extent we can. There's a facial recognition feature in Lightroom. There's GPS mapping that's done automatically. If your camera attaches GPS location to your images, it will map it. But otherwise, if it's other things, like I need green things for a mosaic that I'm doing, or I need landscapes and I need pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge, or I'm searching for one child in particular, I need pictures of Cameron for a book that I'm doing every year for him. So I can locate that faster if I put those keywords in. Only downfall to doing it on import is it's going to apply to all the images. So if they're different, you might not use keywords on import. But if these are all children, I tag children as a keyword. Again, things we'll do next week. I could I could type in children as one of my keywords. You just separate your keywords by commas. Yep, it's a comma. So if I have, maybe my example in the last class was the Golden Gate Bridge image. So I could type Golden Gate Bridge as 3 separate words, and it just separates them by a comma. So if they're all the same, you can do that. If they're different, you'll want to do it later on, and I'll show you that too. So at this point, if I'm importing from a hard drive, I'm done. I can just hit import. Now, if you are importing from a camera, you have way more stuff to to click on. Let me get down here. Okay. Let's save some time because I'm going to have to do this tonight and import Dahlia's pictures. All right, where does she start? Here we go. 134 pictures. That's not bad. I actually thought there was more. Okay. So I need to import this session that I just did Monday. And now I have a few more, you'll see you have a few more things because I have now copy is what's selected up here. I need to copy to a new location and put it in the catalog. So Lightroom needs to do 2 things. That's why I got more things to think about here. File handling, all the same. Where do I want to put it? How do I want to build previews? Make a second copy, do my backup right away. Add to collection. I'm going to create a different one since I'm importing this. Let's see. What's her last name? Bergman. Dahlia Newborn. So I'm going to create a collection for it based on how I structure it. I'll put it in there. Now, here's the difference. I have file renaming. You can rename your files in Lightroom after the fact. But if you're importing straight from a card, you might as well rename them now. There's many different things that you can do. There are templates in here. There's custom name with a sequence, and it'll always show you a preview of what it's going to look like. So I can type in custom name, Bergman D, and then it will start sequentially from 1 when it imports this set of images. So I can do that. I can I mean, I can choose date and file name. So it will put the date that I took it and the file name that the camera gave it. Can leave it like that. You choose whatever it is makes you happy. You just have to make sure that rename files is checked and you're good to go. Yeah.
When you press import, you can return to do the rename filing or how?
Yes, if you are doing it from a hard drive, but you want to rename them in Lightroom, I will show you how to do that. Yep, it's done after the import window. Mm-hmm, Aaron.
What is the difference between custom name X of Y and custom name?
So if I import an image and I want to attach a custom name, I can type whatever I want. And then what it does is in parentheses, it puts one of however many images I'm importing. So I'm importing 134. So my file name will be Bergman D, one of 134. It's a very weird naming structure. And parentheses sometimes does not play nicely between different softwares, so keep that in mind. But did you say original file name or sequence?
Just custom name and then the custom.
Oh, so just the custom name would be you name it whatever you want. Now, I wouldn't recommend just doing custom name because it's going to try and name all the files the same name, and it's going to have to come up with some way to not do that. So I would definitely do, if you want to do custom name, do something like a sequence, or I like doing custom name with original file number so that it keeps the 4-digit number that I put at the end, but then it lets me do a custom name instead of IMG, which is the default on my camera. I actually have created my own, and we'll get to presets again. We'll get to presets next week, so you can just kind of do whatever you want at this point. But I have created it. You'll be able to go in here and create your own, but I've created it where it is a custom, custom text. Here, let me get up here and delete this. Custom text underscore and then the file name. So the original file name, so the IMG. So mine looks like this, just because, I don't know, that's what I got used to. That's what we did at the studio, so that's what I just started to do on my own. Don't know why. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's comfort, I guess, is what it is. So that's what mine is structured to. Avoid spaces where possible. Probably more so on export than import, just because when you do things for the web hates spaces. The web hates characters and symbols, that kind of stuff, sometimes parentheses. So in all honesty, I would probably stick to dashes or underscores for anything that you do, because it will be more web friendly if you don't want to change it yet again after you're done. So let me save this one. Custom with file name. Oh, did I create it? I didn't see it in there. Oops. Did I miss it? Oh, I did. It has my preset. There we go. Once you create presets, it'll show up in there. But yeah, it'll always give you a preview at the bottom so you can kind of see what it is. You can give it a shoot name if you want to, and then it gives it a sequential number. So you can pick whatever you want. You could leave it at the original file name. Obviously, at some point, you'll have 2 files with the same name. Lightroom might not like that. So you do have to be careful of that. It's better to rename your files. But you can always do it after the fact. I know some photographers that don't do it on import, but do it on export after they've edited through. One photographer told me she does it after she's done culling through her images and getting rid of the bad ones, because what she discovered was if she left it as the file names, now, no one has ever questioned me, but I totally get what she's talking about here. If I leave it 8889, 8890, 8891. So if I leave it in that sequential order, but I delete, 8890, and then I give it to the customer and they see 8889 and 8891, they'll be like, well, what happened to 90? Well, where's that one? I want to see that one too. So she's had people that asked her that. I have never been questioned because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to choose. There's so many to choose from. So I don't, I give them too many is my problem. I need to narrow it down more than what I do currently. But she said what she does is when she exports, she will change all the file names before she exports. So she'll then give it a like a shoot name or the client name, and then so she will sequentially number it 001 and then let it go from there. So she does it that way, so they only see the sequential order. They don't question that there's anything missing in between. So that's why I'll show you how to do that in Lightroom too, because this feature isn't there if you're doing it from a hard drive. So that's one reason why you might want to, but you might want to wait until you get rid of the bad pictures.
You can make 2 copies and make one of them say raw, if the customers want the raw photos too.
Yes, exactly. And then the only other thing that becomes confusing is if you change it in Lightroom, you probably want to change the original file name too, because it's so hard to explain. So you'll have the naming structure in Lightroom. If you only change it when you export from the export menu, I know we haven't gotten there yet, so it might be confusing, so I'm sorry if it is. If you're changing it in the export menu, but not in Lightroom, you now have given the customer a different naming structure that you then have to attempt to match up later on in Lightroom. And that is a headache. So whatever you show the client, I would make sure is what you have in Lightroom, because then there's no guessing game like, I think that's this image, it looks like it, because you named it Bergman D001, and then in Lightroom it's still image 8881. And you're like, oh crap, which one is that? So you're not sure which one to use. So I'll show you how to change it in Lightroom, and I would make sure that those match what you export, just for ease of reference later on. So you can change whatever name you want. So if I do custom with file name, I'll just do what I typically do here. I'm going to do none because I'm going to use this later on. And then you still have your apply during import options. You have your keyword options, that's all the same. I'm just going to add this in here. But then the last option you have that's different than from a hard drive is destination. You have to tell it where it's going to copy to, because it's copying from your hard drive. Where's it going? So you have to tell it. If you have a folder already, you can just navigate through here to find it. If you don't have a folder, and chances are you probably don't, you need to create a new one, you can click this little plus sign to the left of destination, create new folder, and then basically it becomes a save as menu. Where do you want to put it? So I will eventually use this. So I'm going to stick it right where I put my stuff already in my image referenced folder. I'm going to create a new folder in there. I got Bergman, but this is D, because one's maternity, S is for her mom for maternity, D is for Dahlia, and we're going to photograph her often, so I'm going to name this newborn so I can keep the month straight. So now I have the folder, and I will hit choose. And Lightroom will automatically link to that then. So
Right now, like, put it in the folder.
yeah, go right ahead. Yep, so wherever you plan on copying it to, copy that. It will link automatically. And now I'm ready. So wherever you're at, whether you've done hard drive or from camera, you can click the import button. What you're going to notice is it's going to take a little bit, depending on how many you have selected. I probably shouldn't have selected all of this because I have 100 some images. But what Lightroom is going to do is in the top left corner, you will see it says copy and import or just import, depending on what you're doing, and it will start adding the pictures. It will not necessarily add them in the order that they were displaying from your card or your hard drive. It's just whatever it can get up there right away is what it puts up there. Cool thing is as it's importing, you can start editing the files and doing things with the files that are showing up. So you can do whatever you want as it's working in the background. It does a background import, so you can go ahead and get to work. I'm a little OCD that I like to see my images in order, and I don't like to cull through my images until I can see them all in order and compare one to the other. So I typically get something to drink, get something to eat, and come back when it's all done. But you don't have to be that way. Yours will go way faster than mine. Eventually, it will get them all in there. While it's doing that, I can kind of show you what you're looking at right here, so that you have reference as to what the library module looks like. So let me get into choosing and importing preferences. You can do a couple of things. If you're a person that waits until everything is imported before you do stuff, you know, if I walk over there to do something, I might want to know when it's done. So I might want Lightroom to ding or give me a note, something when it's done, so that I know, so that I'm not like, oh, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? You might want to do that in the Lightroom preferences. So under the Lightroom menu in preferences, we have several import preferences. And that's going to fall, where am I falling here? Under general, I believe is where it all, there we go. Under the general tab, under preferences, we have lots of different things to look at. And we'll get through these as we move through Lightroom. But for now, the only one I need to pay attention to is a couple of these check boxes here and completion sounds. So by default, select current previous import collection during import is probably checked. So that if you've created things in the past, it will just default to that collection and assume you want to use the same one. You can check or uncheck that depending on what you want. If you want Lightroom to automatically open the import dialog box when you put a camera card in it, you would want to check this top option here so that you don't have to go to the import menu. It will just come up for you. When it's done, if you want after import Lightroom to play some weird sound, and I don't know that my sounds are working right now, you can change it to one of these pre-built sounds on your computer. It's up to you. You don't have to do that though. Same thing with exporting. So that's where those are. And I did check smart previews. Duh, it's gonna take longer. So first it builds your minimal previews, and if you checked smart previews, it's gonna build a smart preview for the entire session. But it always does that secondary so that you can start working. So if I do, let's just do bottle. I don't know what that's gonna sound like. And it's, okay, we'll just do that. So you can do that if you want. If that drives you nuts, don't worry, leave them off. Yeah, go ahead.
When they say tweet, JPEG files.
Yes.
Separate from raw files. So what that means, there will be another file or
Two files, yes.
2 files.
If you shoot
Okay.
RAW and JPEG simultaneously on your camera, you have the option to import them as 2 separate files if you would like. Or what it will do is it will import both kind of as a set, but you will edit off of the RAW file. JPEG will just be available and it will import to that folder. But if a RAW file is available, that's what it's going to use. But if you want if you want your RAW and JPEG, maybe like you said in digital photo, you want to just kind of get your editing skills down and look at the JPEG and try and get your RAW and mimic those settings to match, you might want to check this box so that it imports both so you can see them side by side. But you will just know you'll get duplicates in your catalog. So if that's confusing to you, maybe don't check that. So those would be the ones to worry about right now, right off the bat. Mine's almost done. I don't know what my bottle sound sounds like, but I guess we'll hear it in a second here. Maybe. Ding. That was a sad, sad sound. I don't know what bottle's supposed to be. Is that like popping the... That's what I was going to say. Is it the cork on a bottle? Because I'm in. Yeah, Erin.
Do I just need to like uncheck a lot of these? Because it says there's like
Oh, yeah. So you can do, if you only want a handful, just uncheck all. And then that way you can scroll to whatever you want. And if you just want a small handful, you can like click the first one. You can either check individual boxes or click and then shift click on the last one. And then click a box and it will do all of them. Yeah, you probably don't want all of them. If you have to cancel an import at any time, As that import scroll box is showing up in the upper left, there's a teeny tiny little X at the right of the progress bar. You can click that to cancel if need be. So if something's not working, or you're like, oh my gosh, I did 600 photos instead of the 10 I wanted, cancel it. So what Lightroom has, as we're working through the rest of our import, is we have different modules. So at the top of Lightroom, and let me give you a book reference here. The 4 things you'll want to know about getting around Lightroom. It's on page 25 if you have to go back to it. So at the top of Lightroom, we have the different modules that show up. Are they calling this the tools still? Or just they call it a couple different things, so I want to see if they give it a specific name so I match that. I basically just call this my tool organization area of Lightroom. Now, the library module is where we basically view our library. We can see where our images live, the collections we've created, the metadata. We can add keywords, do descriptive metadata, that kind of stuff. So that's the library module. As we get further in, we'll work through a lot of these, but the develop module is where we'll edit and do color adjustments. The map is where we can map GPS locations. Book is creating a book, slideshow, print, getting images ready for print, creating collages, that kind of stuff. Web is on its way out the door. We can create kind of like a web gallery. We don't really even cover it. It's kind of dumb. So we don't even bother. It's seriously on its way out the door, so expect that to disappear. Someone said the slideshow may potentially disappear also. Actually, I think he said it in this new book. That slideshow's it's changed the way it works. They might just relabel it like video rather than slideshow, because we can import videos and merge videos and stills together, add music and some stuff. We'll talk about that. But there's some changes coming to slideshow potentially in the future. So we're going to stick to library right now because we're focusing on our organization. Now this top bar, sometimes we need to maximize the space on our screens. The top, all these sidebars are collapsible. So I can hide these to maximize I'm in grid view. This thumbnail view right here is called grid view. I can maximize this space if necessary, especially if you're working on a laptop. These are generous size screens. You might not have that generous size at home, so you need as much space as possible. So these arrows that are on the top, the left, the right side, you can click to show and hide those. And then by default, now people have a love-hate relationship with this. By default, when you mouse over that top part, it will show those modules so that you can switch. People either love that or hate that. It doesn't bother me, but some people it drives them absolutely nuts if they're mousing or if their mouse is moving around and they're like, oh man, there it is and there it goes, and it drives them nuts. More so the side menus, that if you're moving over and you go too far, it pops up and you're like, no, I wanted this, but you keep going too far. So some people hate that. There is an option to turn that off by right-clicking this disclosure triangle on any side, doesn't matter which one. You can change it to manual so that it doesn't, if you accidentally mouse over it, it doesn't bring it up. You actually have to click the triangle to make it show up. So you can choose that if you want. But there are quick ways to get those to show and get those to hide. If you were to hit the tab bar, tab will hide the side too. Let me open this up here. So tab hides the left and right side panels. If you click Shift tab, it hides everything except for your grid. So if you need to maximize your space, Shift tab will become a good friend of yours. It just hides it. And you can manually, if you want to, mouse over or open this, just one side if you want to, but keep all the other ones collapsed. And then one by one click it back if you really want to. But Shift tab will just be your very quick show hide type of a deal. So those are there. Let me make sure I'm not skipping over something I wanted to show you through the book here. Is it still importing?
I only put 14 pictures.
Oh. That's
Yeah,
weird.
really.
Oh,
Maybe the flash drive was just, maybe it's writing too slow to the flash drive.
isn't those quick sheets are printed?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
already wrote down.
Let me go get that for you. Let's cancel this. I think what it's doing because the flash drive is a little slow. Let's do this. I'm gonna make a quick adjustment here. What we'll do is we'll work off your desktop and then we'll copy it to your flash drive after. I think it's just the flash drive doesn't want to write fast enough that it's taking forever, and that's why it's doing it.
Because included it was this next word. So I was like, what is here? But now there's like not that many.
Yeah, flash drives sometimes don't go as fast as we want. Let's just force it. Because otherwise it might sit there a while too. Let's minimize this so it's all down here for you. Right here. Let's do this. And then we're gonna open it up in here. This should go a lot quicker, but what we'll do at the end of class, we'll grab that folder and we'll copy it to your flash drive so that you have it. So try grabbing those 14 hits, you go a lot faster now. Hopefully, it probably kept your presets too. It usually keeps your last preset, so you should be good. Yeah, I'll grab your quick key things too, so you can write those down.
It was a replacement of, like, halfway behind it, the battery malfunction, and it, like, torched the camera in place, so that was, 2 years ago. My parents got me it because I had no camera at the time, so we found vision on it, but they had to replace it. Usually you can get it a little cheaper. I use a 50mm prime that you can get one. Yeah, which that is pretty cheap.
They're nice and warm. As is the classroom, holy cow. There's a distinct difference coming from the hallway in here. Wasn't bad when we first got
This
here.
is like probably one of my favorite lenses that I've had. But unfortunately, when that.
Okay, there's your quick key chart.
Forged, it had one of my favorite lenses.
We should laminate these someday. Yeah.
It's gonna be way off topic. but
Go
I'm
for it.
I use Premiere Pro for video.
Yeah.
But I see you can upload video in here, and I've also heard it's useless to do so. Is there any edited inside here?
No, no, it's basically put the video inside a slideshow. That's about the extent of your editing. So if you're familiar with Premiere, you're way better off using that.
You know, like, brought video in, and it didn't even bring the video, it just brought the first, like, clip of the video. It just brought a picture of that, and I was like, well, that's useless, it looks like crap.
Yeah, it just will bring, it'll bring the first frame of it. It's not until you get to the slideshow where you can actually kind of play through those. You can play through the preview in I believe it's survey mode, or not survey,
Used for like 5.
E, whatever E is. Loop, there we go. In loop view, you should be able to play through it, but yeah, when you're looking in thumbnail view, it's just gonna give you the first frame.
Photography is
So yeah, it looks like it's completely useless at that point. But yeah, you can't do any, there's really no edit feature, unless the latest version that I haven't seen yet, but it's still gonna be minimal. You're still better off in Premiere. So yeah, I
I
would.
do Premiere when you teach the DSLR, right?
Yes, we will teach, because it's such a short class, we'll use iMovie for it. But we have an entire digital media program, so they teach Final Cut Pro and Premiere Pro in their production classes. So we have both, and we use both, just not necessarily in our program. I have a few students that'll take those editing classes for that reason. But yeah, we only have 7 quick weeks. So now, once we're in there, we have, within the library module, we have different views that we can use. So in here, now, there's bars all over the place. You'll get used to it. It'll be hard to find some of them at first, but there's little toolbars all over the place here. I'm in grid view right now, but I have, here are the little icons just below my grid of all the different views that I can switch to, and we'll work within more of them as we go on. But if I want to view just a single image, I can switch to loop view. The quick key is an E, but honestly, if you just double click an image, it brings it up in loop view, and then simply double clicking again takes it out of loop view. Sometimes that's just quicker. But otherwise, E will switch back and forth. E for loop view, which is not easy to remember. But at least G for grid. No matter what module you're in, if I'm editing an image and I'm like, I need to go back to my grid so I can see what I'm doing, I can just hit G and it will flip back to the library module, back into grid view. So G for grid view is probably a better one to know. Loop view is simply just double clicking. Honestly, you'll use more. There's another one that is a comparison. Compare view is C, and basically what that allows me to do, and we'll get into this more, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it allows me to compare 2 similar images. So like if this is my first image and this is, here, let me get, I don't use compare mode very much here. Let's swap this. There we go, and then this one. So if I want to compare 2 images that are similar to see which one's better, like her eyes are open a little bit on this one's better, she's sleeping, I can go through and compare images very quickly.
If we want to compare like a raw files, we can choose between raw and JPEG.
You could, yeah. If you have RAW and JPEG and you imported them as 2 separate files, yeah, you could show both of them and make a comparison. If you're working on editing between the 2, develop mode only shows before after of the same image. It doesn't show 2 images together, so you'd have to go back and forth. Honestly, I find greater benefit in survey mode or view. Survey is not an easy quick key. If you're trying to remember quick keys, it's N for, I don't know, next image. I have no idea. There's no real good way of remembering that. But that allows me to compare not only 2, but as many images as I have selected here. And it's kind of fun because it allows you to narrow down, like, okay, out of these images, hey, she's smiling, but this smiling's better than this one, so let me click X. This one's fine, but I think the composition in this one's better, so let's get rid of that one. Her eyes are open in this one, let's get rid of that one. Now I'm down to these 2. These are the 2. So, you know, survey mode allows you to narrow, I think, better than compare. But that could just be me. You might find more benefit in compare than survey. I don't know. But I think the majority of you will probably use grid and loop view more than anything. I love survey, though. So those are the different views that you have available to you. Now, I've used the term cull before, and some of you just heard it this morning in class, so you know now, but for those that weren't in class this morning. Culling is basically the term that photographers use to weed through your images to get rid of the bad ones, pick your favorite ones, and then move to the editing process. So you usually don't start the editing process till you've gone through and narrowed down the images within a session or whatever it is that you've imported to be able to use them. So we go through the culling process, and sometimes that we want to see the full image by doing Shift Tab in Loop View, or let me get in Loop View here. By doing Shift Tab in Loop View, I can tell you already, I don't like this picture at all, allows me to very quickly flip through and pick my favorite, reject the one I don't want, that kind of stuff. So I can do this by doing Shift Tab to see the image bigger. I also have full screen mode, and I put that on your sheet too. That was the first one I put. Full screen mode is simply just F, and it just gives you a black background with your image so you're not distracted by everything else. And then it allows you just to use your arrow keys, right and left arrow keys, to quickly flip through your images and decide what you like and what you don't like. And then you can just hit the F to cycle back. So F full screen, F to cycle back to your previous screen. So that is an option. But as far as views, that's pretty much what you'll use to start with. You may not even use full screen, who knows? So F for full screen, Shift Tab just to hide things, or click these little arrows to hide them if you don't need them. I find I go back and forth so much that I just go back and forth. I just do kind of like a Shift Tab quickly and go back and forth between. I do full screen more so when I'm showing people stuff. So that's about it from the view standpoint. I'm not going to get as far in organization as I want to today. We'll do the best we can. There's so much to do. And I'm skipping over some stuff. Can you imagine? Told you I needed a 4-hour class for some of this. 2 hours is not enough. So let's talk a little bit more about the organization stuff. Well, I'll just kind of pick and choose here what to do with our last 10 minutes of class here, because I got to explain your assignment. So really, I've got 5 minutes to walk you through organization. No. Honestly, the book does a good job of walking you through. Scott Kelby, his books are very well written. Sometimes he is semi-arrogant with how he talks in his books, and oh, I'm the best, and especially if you read the first page of a chapter. But it's very easy to follow, and he's got the visuals to go with it, so I definitely appreciate that. We've talked about where to store your catalog, so I'm going to skip through some of this. The one thing I think that would be good to show you is the left-hand side here, which is really just where everything lives. You'll see in the library module, you have your navigator, which is basically a preview of your image. Where you're going to find benefit in that is if you are zooming in on an image to see if it's clear or whatever it is, you can single click an image to view it at 100%. And you'll see right here what happens is this is showing you the portion of your image that you're viewing. Now I can grab the hand tool and move around if I want to. I can grab this little box and move it wherever I want. And I can choose what I want to view. So when I click on this, I can view a 2-to-1 ratio, which is 200%. Totally unnecessary. Honestly, 1-to-1 is as close as you need to get. Zoom photo to 100%. A lot of your editing needs to be no closer than at 100%. So simply clicking will automatically do 100. If you click but you want to go at a 2-to-1, it's going to zoom into 200%. It will remember the last thing you used. Wow, that's not clear at all at 200%. It's questionable at 100%. So that's what the navigator's for. Now, the catalog section here, this will give you, if you don't organize your photos at all, curse you. No, I'm kidding. You will have an all photographs section that will show you every photograph in your catalog. My catalog, when I opened it this morning, the one that I run off my hard drive, has almost 13,000 pictures in it. So if I click all photographs, it will show all 13,000 pictures. Right now, your number matches what you just imported, so it means not much to you at this point until you import more stuff. It will have a previous import. So the last set of images that you imported, if you forgot to organize it in some way, shape, or form, you can click previous import and it will show just that set. So if you have 300 images but you just imported 5, you're like, oh crud, I forgot to create a collection for that. You can click previous import and it will show you just the last group. Make it easier to find. We'll go through this quick collection and all that stuff later on. So ignore that for now. Folders, here's my recommendation. Collapse it. Don't look into it. Alexis told me that when this was part of our conversation, she's like, I don't use collections ever. I'm like, ooh, gasp. And I laughed when I read through this new edition of the book because he did the same thing. He's like, you don't use collections, you have to use collections. But she just goes based off of her folders. So she opens up her hard drive, and anything that's imported, she references that. This could be an okay thing, but it could also be a disaster. If you accidentally move that folder, you now can find nothing. And you could move your folders on accident, and then when you go to your hard drive, you can't find them and you're freaking out because somewhere by accident in Lightroom you moved it. People think and sometimes you might say, oh, I don't need this right now. So you delete it. But what happens when you delete a folder here is you're deleting it off your hard drive. Whoo! Yeah, because it's referencing the actual folder of where it lives. So that's why just ignore it. The only reason you should go into it is if an image is missing and you need to relocate a file folder. So if you have a big old question mark that appears, if I were to, here, let me do this. Don't ever do this. I'm just going to move the newborn session inside the maternity session momentarily. I moved my folder from where it lives. Now I have this box is appearing. I have a question mark over here. I don't know how well you can see that. I have a question mark over here. It says, what the heck did you do? Where'd it go? You told me it was on that hard drive in image reference, and it's not there. So where is it? So I now need to locate it. It's got a question mark. I have to right click here, find missing folder. So if you ever have that happen, and sometimes going back and forth Mac and PC, this happens. So what you would do is just the highest level of wherever the question marks appear, find missing folder, and then locate it. It'll bring up a Finder window. Bless you. It'll bring up a Finder window. So just re-find where that folder is and connect it. Now I'm going to move it back because I don't want to do that. Now you could also click on the image itself right here, and it will ask you to locate it. You might get an exclamation mark, or you might just get this box. I don't know why it's different, but it's one of the two. A box will appear in this corner, and it's missing. So, oh wait, I lie. I'm sorry. I have a smart preview, so I don't have the exclamation mark. So it's using my smart preview because it can't find my file folder. If it has an exclamation mark, you don't have smart previews, and it can't find anything. You're stuck. So it wants me to locate my original file. If I locate it, it will automatically find all the images that are in that folder. So you could just locate one and it will find the rest automatically, as long as they're in the same folder structure. But let me move that back because that was just a bad choice. Bergman S, Bergman newborn. There we go. Lightroom will be happy once again. So collapse the file folder, pretend it doesn't exist. Collections. That's where you organize your stuff. This is just strictly within Lightroom. In Lightroom, here's how you organize your stuff. What he does starting on page, find your best shots. Where does he do this? Reducing clutter and stacks. I went too far into the chapter. Organizing your folders in collections. Okay, so he starts it on page 42. Where he will talk about collections and collection sets. This is how you can organize. So I can create, it's basically a collection set is a, think of it as like a box of photos. If you think back to film, you have a box of photos that you store all of your printed film photos in and negatives. And then inside there, you have the little paper envelopes that you used to go pick up when you developed your film. And so every collection is that paper envelope with all your negatives and your printed images, and the collection set is the box that you store all of them in. So I could have a collection set of children, and then a collection for every client I have where I do children photography. I could have a collection set for wedding, and then all my weddings in separate collections. So that's basically what that organization structure is. And this little plus sign lets us create them. So if you forgot to create it on import, here is where you can do that now. And you can drag and drop. They will always be in the whole catalog, even if they don't live in a collection. They will always be there under all photographs. This is just a faster way to get to just that set of images that you're looking for. So work within collections. Don't work within folders unless you have to locate a missing folder. It will give you a headache. Okay. So I'm going to have to stop there. I didn't get through as much, but I got through a chunk. So I want you to kind of go through, breeze through the rest of chapter 2. If you have problems, let me know. We have Flex Lab available on Wednesday nights and Monday mornings. You can do the web conference for Monday morning if you don't necessarily need to drive all the way in here. But there are some parts of this chapter that I skip over anyway, which would be adding keywords. We're going to do that next week regardless. Face tagging people, GPS stuff. That stuff we kind of skip over. So there's actually a chunk of stuff that we don't necessarily even go through within chapter 2. So I've gotten through a big chunk of it for you. But here's what I want you guys to start playing with for next week. You're going to, within your Lightroom catalog, play with some images and practice importing and exporting. So I have an assignment link there that you can click on in week 2 in Blackboard, and it will bring up your directions here. So you're basically going to follow through beginning to end and just follow all of these steps. There are a couple of screenshots that I want you to take because unless I'm standing over your shoulder watching you do it, I can't see that you've done it correctly. So I need you to take a snapshot of your computer screen for me so that you can submit those screenshots and I can see that you've checked the right boxes. If you're on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-4. On a PC, I believe you just have on your keyboard a print screen button, I believe. That you just hit the print screen button and then you can grab that file. It probably will copy it. I've had to have some students open a Word document and the print screen button just saves it to a clipboard and then you have to paste it into Word and then the image will show up. I'm fine if you do it that way too, that's fine. So basically what you're going to do, you already have a new catalog so you're fine. You're going to import a handful of images. I just put 30 to 50 as a rough number. And in the import menu, I need you to make sure that you have these things checked. You will do a different set of, you will do one thing different if you're importing from a camera card because you will rename the files on import. If you are doing it from a hard drive, you will have to do that in step 3. So that's the only thing that's different. So if you do it in one spot, you don't have to do it in the other. But you need to take a few screenshots for me. So you're going to take a screenshot of the import menu before you hit import. If you get click happy, you click import and go, oh, I should take a screenshot. You're done. So you're going to have to fake it and go back in and reset everything. So just make sure you take that screenshot before you click the import button. Now you're going to organize after that. If you import from a hard drive, I tell you right here, you go library menu, rename photo. This is where you rename your photos if you don't do it in the import menu. So if you do from a camera card, do it in import and then skip that step. If you do it from a hard drive, go library and then rename it from there. That's where you would do it. It's the same process, it just brings up a dialog box to do it. Then what you're going to do is go through your images, and this is the part of chapter 2 that you'll want to read, is the organization part. There's something called picks and rejects, and he has a good explanation on why you may or may not want to use a star rating. A pick is a flag on an image. If I click this one, a pick is right here, this little flag, where it flags it with a little white flag, meaning this is a good image, come back to it and edit. A reject is a black flag with an X through it, meaning go away, this is horrific. And so what I want you to do is I want you to pick 5 images Well, I should say at least 5. You're not necessarily going to edit it yet. We'll use that when we start talking about editing. But go through, reject images that are bad, pick at least 5 images that are good. And then I want you to create a collection using those picked images. And the book will show you how to do that, so follow through with that. Then, with the images that you have imported, I want you to add just one descriptive keyword for each photo. So you might have a handful of photos where you could use the same keyword, and we're going to do more keyword stuff next week. But basically, if these 3 are the same, like these are feet pictures. Here, let me click all of these. I can click those images, and then under keyword, that's on the right-hand side here, keywording, I can do feet, so that I can find the feet images very quickly later on. So you can tag it to those images that are highlighted. Otherwise, just one at a time, you can attach keywords to.
So these is we send that through.
Or are you talking about at the end?
Yeah. How do we send the video?
So you'll want to have the images. So once you do the keyword, that's it. That's the last step. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to turn in your catalog. I have the directions on how to do that exporting, but I will gladly walk you through it next week at the beginning of class. Because I don't want that, I want you to make sure you do it right from the start. But in class materials, I have an export Lightroom catalog link that walks you through exactly what you have to do to export your catalog and what boxes you have to check in that menu. I will happily walk you through at the beginning of class if you just bring your catalog with you. I will show you what to do since we didn't have enough time today. But then just put those screenshots that you've taken on your flash drive, hard drive, whatever, because you will dump your catalog and your screenshots. I believe you have 5, I don't remember, is what you will submit. I think there's 4. You will submit those screenshots and your catalog next week. So I will show you where to put that. If you come to Flex Lab and you finish, I will show you where to put it there. But otherwise, I will show you at the very beginning of class next week, and we will get them all onto the server, so you can turn that in, and we'll kind of see how everyone does with it.
I have a question.
Yeah?
So my catalog is on this computer,
Yes.
but I'll have to make a new one.
You can make a new one if you want, or you can copy that onto, let's see, you didn't have a hard drive, right? Okay. So you could create a new one since you were just playing with files today.
Okay.
You could easily just go to File, Create New Catalog, the first option in the File menu, and just start a catalog from scratch. So you'll be fine, because you really don't have anything to play with in there anyway. So yeah, go ahead and create a new one if you want. Otherwise, if your catalog's on your desktop, you'll just have to quit Lightroom and then copy that whole folder to your external drive. And then you're good to go. Yeah.